March the 22nd? 22nd. The time is 1:08. Our first item of business is to review and approve the minutes of the meeting of March the 8th, 2022. If there's no additional or corrections, we will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second. All right, Detective Pitts, can you call up the first item, please?
Madam Chair, we have a new application for beer and wine off premise, AAW Shell. Address is 1100 4th Avenue North.
Is the applicant or the representative here? Come to the podium, please, and state your name and your address, please.
Lori Valentine,
What's your address, ma'am?
745 Tara Drive, Columbiana, Alabama.
Okay, Detective Pitts, any incidents at this location? I see it's a new application.
Madam Chair, no incidents.
Ms. Brundage, does it meet zoning requirements?
Madam Chairman, this location is on M1. It's in a light industrial district, zone district, and it does meet zoning requirements.
Okay, Mr. Stanley, are they in good standing?
Madam Chair, yes, they are clear. There are no delinquencies.
Okay. Council Williams, do you have any comments?
I do not, but I do have a motion we approve.
Okay, we approved. Second the motion, so your item will go to the full council or the next council meeting, which will be March 29th. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. And the meeting is at 9:30. Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Have a good one. Detective Peace, can you call up the first item, please? The next item.
Madam Chair, we have a new application for lounge retail liquor class 1, and it's Audio's Margarita Bar. Address is 2218 First Avenue North.
Okay. Applicants, can you come to the podium, please? State your name and your address for the record, please. And your
Vin Tran.
plans for this location.
My name is Vin Tran. The address is 2218 First Avenue North, Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay. And what's your name, sir?
Jesus Mendez.
Okay. And what's your plans for this location? What's your plans, yes? What's your plans for this location? It's a margarita bar, right? Okay. Okay. All right, Detective Pitts, no incidents, new application, right?
Yes, ma'am, no incidents.
Brundage, does it meet zoning requirements?
Madam Chairman, this location is on B4. It's in a central business district zone, and it does meet zoning requirements.
Okay, Mr. Stanley?
Madam Chair, we do show, do you have two other locations, businesses? Bad Tacos on Oak Hope? Yes, we show both of those locations, licenses have not been renewed for 2022. They need to be renewed, but there are no delinquent taxes.
Okay. Mr. Williams, you got a question?
Yeah, y'all think y'all can get those business licenses renewed here in the next week before this upcoming week's?
We'll do it today.
Yeah, all right, great. Yeah, sometimes our, what's the name of that Avenue system? Yeah, sometimes it's slower than actual paper going through the mail for some reason. But anyway, I'm excited about this. What's y'all's time frame on opening?
Right now, we have two separate time frames. This and then our general contractor. We were wanting May, but it's looking more like June.
Okay. All right. I'll see y'all this summer. Motion to approve.
Second. All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Have a good one. Detective Peace, can you call up the next item, please?
Madam Chair, we have a new application for restaurant retail liquor, Yo Chef Surf and Turf Smokehouse. Address is 2201 4th Place West.
All right, the applicant here or the representative? Can you state your name and address for the record, please?
My name is Michelle Carmichael, 1910 34th Avenue North.
Okay. All right.
201 4th Place West.
All right, thank you. And so I'm familiar with Yo Chef and just kind of give the committee the plans that you have for the location.
It's a restaurant.
We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. Our plans are a restaurant and slash surf and turf bar.
Okay. Okay. All right, Detective Pitts, new location, no incidents, correct?
Yes, ma'am, no incidents.
It's Brundage, is it zone, does it meet the zoning requirements?
Madam Chairman, this location is on M1. It's in a light industrial district, and it does meet zoning requirements.
Thank you. And Mr. Stanley, are they in good standing with taxes and revenue?
Madam Chair, there are some delinquencies on sales tax, occupational tax for January and February of this year. But as Councilor Williams said, it could be delayed in our system. But I can get with y'all.
Okay, make sure you get with Mr. Stanley to make sure that those taxes and those delinquencies are brought to date. Any committee members would like to speak to this item?
I have a question. Why would the neighborhood know?
Because he went to Thomas and Pacifico Finley, and both presidents told him that they didn't think the restaurant was in their district, and it's right on Finley Avenue.
Oh, okay.
Yep. So he appeared to both of the neighborhood associations.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. Council Williams, do you have questions?
All good.
All right.
Move for approval.
Second.
Your item will graduate to the council agenda for next Tuesday. Thank y'all. Have a good one. Next item, Detective Pitts.
Madam Chair, we have a new application for special retail liquor over 30 days, event concession number 20, 32nd Street North.
Is the representative here? State your name and address for the record, please.
Joe O'Brien, 355 Highway 361, Pelham.
Hey, Detective Pitts, any incidents?
Madam Chair, no incidents.
Ms. Brundage, does it meet the zoning requirements?
Madam Chairman, this location is on M2, and it's in a heavy industrial district zone, and it does meet zoning requirements.
Okay. All right, Mr. Stanley, are they in good standing with taxes and revenue?
Madam Chair, there are no delinquencies on their account.
Okay, and council member, committee members, they are taking over the concession, so do any of you all have any questions?
Yeah, so y'all are taking over the concessions for all Sauce Furnace events?
Just the special events.
Okay. What special events will y'all be doing?
The first one is scheduled that I'm made aware of is the Magic City application.
Okay.
When is that?
April 22nd, 23rd, 24th.
And then, so are y'all are not doing Furnace Fest?
Yeah, I believe we are.
That's the only firm date that I can give it.
Okay.
My understanding is we're doing anything for this alcohol.
Okay. And what's your experience? Have you been in business for a while, or tell us your background?
The company was incorporated in 2007. I've been in the business since 1989.
Okay.
I've owned the company since 1999.
Okay.
I've got some liquor licenses at customers that have to do it, and pick up the board, rather than to do it.
Okay. Good deal. All right. That's all I got.
I move for approval.
Second.
Thank you, sir, to go to the council agenda on March 29th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Detective Pitts, can you call up the next item, please?
Madam Chair, we have a new application, Lounge Retail Liquor Class 1, Uptown Jazz. Address is 2250 9th Avenue North, Suite B.
Is the applicants present?
I move for a 2-week delay.
Second. Thank you. All right, the next item is an agreement. Item 6 is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute and deliver an agreement with ESO Solutions Incorporated and the Birmingham Fire and Rescue Department. Is the representative here?
It's Jason. Jason Reynolds.
Because they come to hear Mr. Lewis present.
Good afternoon. My name is Matt Lamont. I serve as Assistant Chief for Birmingham Fire. I can answer any questions you have about these.
What exactly is it?
It's a merging the fire and EMS record management software. We're replacing a 25-year-old server-based system with a cloud-based system to make sure the imports of patient care reports, our reports, inspections, all merged together in one operating system.
Okay. Will our emergency communications district have access to it?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's all I got.
You got questions, Council Smitham?
No, I'm good. Okay, motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you. It'll go on the council agenda on the 29th. Thank you. Okay, next item is a resolution authorizing the mayor to execute and deliver agreement with ESO and the EMS billing office. Did he leave? Okay.
Terribly sorry about that. It's the same operating system. I'm sorry. It's the fire reports and the EMS or emergency services reports. Operating system.
Okay. All right. Any questions, committee members?
Move the item.
Second. All right. Thank you, sir. And our final item is a presentation from Dr. Douglas Woods, the director of the Aspen Justice and Institute. So, Dr. Woods, take it away.
Check. I pull it up.
What is it? Stay down.
Chairperson Tate, thank you so much for this wonderful opportunity. And thank you for your gracious invitation to allow us to be in front of the council today and in front of this important committee. I just want to say personally, I want to thank you for your leadership on this issue here in Birmingham as well as nationally. So today I want to talk a little bit more about the Justice and Governance Partnership. I know we talked a lot about it earlier, but I want to go a little bit more in depth. Some of this you've already seen, and some of it you haven't seen. So I'm going to take it just a little bit slower. And as I always say, I love to quote my grandmother, and my grandmother is from South Carolina, and she always says, Douglas, you got to boil it down to the low gravy. So if I had to boil it down to the low gravy, what this is really about is consolidating data systems and extrapolate it down to the neighborhood level. So then you can make decisions around that data, around justice reinvestment, with regard to transforming the criminal justice system, reducing violence, and a variety of different other measures.
Sorry to interrupt, but is there any paperwork or anything with this?
Well, we can certainly provide it. I think we have a 2-pager we might have sent, but we haven't printed it out. So we can certainly provide that to the counselor to be distributed. So as I was saying earlier this morning, a little bit about the context, the theory of change, the expected real-world impact, how the Justice and Governance Partnership works, and then the 4 stages. And we've already talked about the context of really making sure that jurisdictions have the capacity to be able to consolidate data and to make particular decisions around what to do in the space of a diverse justice ecosystem. And I talked earlier. Oh, yes, gosh. I've got to get used to saying next slide. We talked earlier about the criminal justice continuum. Next slide. And the idea that we actually experience justice at the neighborhood level, and it includes all, next slide, all of the different types of interstitial sectors that include socioeconomic, health, and education. Next slide. And we have to consider the wider justice ecosystem when we think about data and the analysis of data at the neighborhood level. Next slide. Now, as I said earlier this morning, this is just an example. We didn't actually do the statewide data, but I want to show you the statewide data, for example, in Tulsa. So this is the state of Oklahoma. The share of Oklahoma's total adult population when it comes to prison is 17%, but the prison admissions is 22% when it comes to Tulsa County. So in Tulsa County, 70% adult population contributes to 22% of prison admissions. But that's not the story. The real story, next slide, is actually the neighborhood that's in the northwest part of Tulsa County. So the share of Tulsa County's total population, 10%, but 45% of prison admissions come from this particular neighborhood in northwest Tulsa. This is the same neighborhood, as I said earlier, where Greenwood was located. Next slide. And then accompanying that, as you can see, is overlapping inequities that includes unemployment, high school diploma, people in poverty, non-white or Hispanic. You can go all over the country and go neighborhood by neighborhood when you actually dial down like this to see data like this. We can do this right here in the city of Birmingham, right down to the neighborhood, seeing all these overlapping inequities. Next slide. So what we're really thinking about here is addressing what we're calling crisis management government. And what we say by that is that we tend to be able to operate in a crisis management way with disjointed data when we should include all of these issues with regard to addressing what happens at the neighborhood level. And we should also, next slide, consider the fact that if we're going to take all this data from all these different sectors to address all of the inequities at the neighborhood level, we also have to consider community knowledge and expertise. Knowledge from community-based organizations, interest group associations, community and youth leaders, neighborhood residents, justice system practitioners. Next slide. And as I said before, the challenges we have in jurisdictions across the country are fragmented data analysis, disjointed policymaking, marginal community engagement. Different sectors don't even know what their data are with respect to how it looks from a holistic, collective way in these neighborhoods. Next slide. So our theory of change is to really invest in local capacity, promote better use of data and community-informed decisions, improve justice and safety, and transform the justice ecosystem in the lives of individuals. So if you look at our theory of change, it really is around those two issues: investments in the local justice ecosystem partnership, investments in community-informed decision-making, power sharing, and equity, supported by technical assistance, peer support, the local intermediary, and evaluation and learning. Next slide. So during the grant period, investment in the community, promoting a steady increase of data and community-informed policy and practices, and ultimately to improve justice and safety locally. And during the post-grant period, really focusing on sustaining the infrastructure and collaboration across what we call the local justice ecosystem. Next slide. Real-world impact: reduced criminal justice crisis management government footprint, increased community-driven violence prevention and resident mobility networks, and hopefully arriving at system legitimacy. Next slide. So we want to have, as I said, increased community-driven violence prevention and resident mobility networks, and we want to reduce the criminal justice and crisis management government footprint to arrive at justice system legitimacy. Next slide. And what we mean by increased community-driven violence prevention and resident mobility networks, that means using data to increase community safety and violence prevention networks as measured by neighborhood, tenant, block association activities, violent prevention, mitigation programs, career violence, for example, youth crisis management groups, et cetera. And I'm not going to read all that. But it gives you a sense that we have these different data measurements that will allow us to actually figure out how we actually increase these types of programs, be they cross-sector human services networks, and again, community-based resident mobility networks. Next slide. so that we reduce the criminal justice and crisis management government footprint. So, for example, the punitive justice footprint. In the justice audit, which is what this is about, we can measure this by measuring stops, summons, arrest, parole, probation, parole, surveillance, jail, prisons, admissions, the critical healthcare footprint as measured by emergency room admissions for chronic illness and behavioral health crises, shootings, domestic violence, and other assaults. All of these data is actually important to measure so that we can figure out how could we actually reduce these different aspects and data that is related to criminal justice and crisis management governance. Next slide. To again, like I said, arrive at justice system legitimacy as measured by neighborhood sentiment regarding, policing, safety, and access to satisfaction with justice, as well as extant government oversight mechanisms such as the police complaint review boards, judicial training, jail inspection visits, etc. Next slide. So how does this all work? We form a local justice collaborative working in partnership with the community, select a local justice intermediary, conduct justice audits, and create and implement justice reinvestment plans. So these are the JGP core elements. So the Justice Collaborative is a diverse range of stakeholders reflecting interests across the wider justice ecosystem. So we will be in conversation with all these different sectors in the community to form the local Justice Collaborative. Then there'll be a selection of the local justice intermediary by a planning and leadership group, where there at that place will be an institutional home for staffing and convening the local justice collaborative and producing the justice audits and reinvestment plans. And then the justice audits themselves are periodically repeated, data-driven, multi-sector, community-informed accounts of consolidated analyses of local justice ecosystems. So that's the crux of it, is really consolidating the data. And then using the justice audit to determine a justice reinvestment plan, where there's collaborative policymaking plan for implementing findings of the justice audit and figuring out where you might want to reinvest the dollars you're already spending. And supporting all this is a provision of national technical assistance working with the Justice Mapping Center, local justice funding collaborative, which you'd like to create, working in partnership with you, and then the participation in the Aspen Justice Network, which are the other jurisdictions, which of course include Grand Rapids and 17 of the poorest counties in South Carolina, and hopefully also Denver in the next round. Next slide. So the initial representative planning group, we need representation from all these different agencies: criminal justice, executive branch, quasi-public institutions, community-based non-governmental organizations, interest groups, philanthropies, health and human services agencies. And then from there, we spread out to an even larger collaborative, where all of these are involved. For example, the criminal justice system agencies, prosecutor's office, police department, sheriff's office. It's important that we're all together. Institutions of higher ed, for example, community-based non-government organizations, interest groups, all of these things. But also at the center of this is community-based action research. So it's not just the quantitative data, it's also the qualitative data. Aspen's community-based action research, next slide, oh, that's it. Aspen's community-based action research initiative seeks to integrate community-centered research approaches that reflect what we call methodological pluralism. And what is a pluralistic research design? It intentionally involves power sharing of co-constructed collaborative inquiry among historically marginalized groups, including in particular people of color, people with disabilities, women, seniors, LGBTQ, low-income, undocumented, indigenous, incarcerated, and formerly incarcerated community people, using anthropological fieldwork techniques, meaning individual stakeholder interviews, constituent focus groups, oral histories, and narratives. When we talk about a neighborhood sentiment survey, typically what happens is somebody at Princeton comes up with the survey, does the analysis, does the writing. In this, it's a co-construction with community members on the sentiment survey, the neighborhood sentiment survey, which makes it very different than what you find in other sort of criminal justice programs. Because we want to elevate the importance of community voice, enable participatory governance and justice policy making, and build social capital of local leadership. Next slide. You guys are already there. All right. So as I said, we want to choose a local justice intermediary. So this initial stage, implementation stage, after the planning process, is that the inaugural justice audit is housed here, and the justice reinvestment plan is housed here. Next slide. So that ultimately the sustainable implementation stage, after that first justice audit has been done and the first justice reinvestment plan has been done, is transferred to the local justice intermediary so they can do a second justice audit and justice reinvestment plan on their own. So the software stays at the local justice intermediary in the local community, so they have the ability to do this yearly on their own. A justice audit every year, justice reinvestment every year, looking at analysis at the neighborhood level every year to make sure that you can measure your outcomes. All your outcomes that we set out in that initial set of outcomes, and also the ones that the community decides that they want to prioritize. And these are candidate institutions for the local, next slide, intermediary. I'm getting a little bit better at this. The quasi-government agency could be a community-based organization, could be a university, could be a special expertise hybrid institutions. This will be chosen by the community, the members of the planning and leadership group. Next slide. Now with the audit, and it's the term that I always use is called methodological pluralism, which means we're using all the data from all these different sectors. So first and foremost, communities of interest, perspectives, as we said, the surveys, the neighborhood sentiment surveys, the community-based action research, community-based non-governmental services information. So we'll be getting information from health and hospitals, higher ed institutions, commercial and community banks, community-based organizations, all this stuff. And then the government institutional operational data from criminal justice agencies such as police, prosecution, public defense, courts, jails, prison, probation, city, of course, housing, health, education, labor. And again, consolidated in one place across agencies. Next slide. And then, of course, this is the audit. This is the analytical consolidation. So all the inputs we have on the left side with the audit, with the output, figuring out what is your justice ecosystem resources? What are you spending? How is the crisis management governance? The geography of safety and justice, system legitimacy, criminal justice system operations. Next slide. So for example, this is what an audit actually looks like. We'll do this by neighborhood: stops, arrests, warrants, charging, pretrial hearings, arraignments, adjudication, sentencing, jail and prison admissions and releases. Then the justice practitioner perspectives on work conditions, operational challenges, client populations. Next slide. Punitive justice footprint, again, neighborhood level, critical healthcare emergency services, neighborhood level, school disciplinary actions, acute residential and family service orders, income support case filings. Next slide. And this is what we call the geography of safety and justice. So we can get down to the neighborhood level on crime rates, safety and insecurity and fear perceptions, violence prevention activities, socioeconomic mobility networks. Next slide. And the audit will also include criminal justice institutional oversight mechanisms and training activities, and all the stuff we said earlier about community priorities on justice, access to justice, expectations of justice, experience with justice institutions, attitudes towards enforcement and punishment. Next slide. Again, violence prevention and socioeconomic mobility network assets, critical response system, agency budgets, which is also critical. I know it's a lot, but the data it's important to gather all this in one place. Next slide. And then from all of that data, we come together with a justice reinvestment plan, which is really focused on coordinated policymaking and what we call braided budgeting. Cross-sector community foreign policy priorities, system and place-based expenditure tallies, and repurposed investment impact estimates, which I think that gives you all the information if you want to reinvest and repurpose dollars, particularly when it comes to the neighborhood level. Next slide. So this is our capacity building theory of action, which we've talked about. Next slide. On the left, these are the stakeholder work groups that we will be forming with you. Perspectival research work groups on the left, and institutional data work groups. So all the stuff on the left is really the community-based work, and then, which is really the qualitative work. The work on the right, you see in the blue under institutional work groups, that's all quantitative. So that all feeds into the Justice Audit and Reinvestment Plan, so that ultimately on the right, new jurisdictional capacities, multi-sector, cross-institutional justice policymaking, community-engaged governance, and braided social purpose, neighborhood targeted budgeting. Next slide. Anyway, so again, National Technical Assistance, Justice Mapping Center, working with the audit and also equal measure with research. Next slide. And we want to also organize a coalition of local funders to support a justice intermediary, including new staff positions focused on collaboration, data analysis, and public education, and support transition to sustainable government and/or quasi-public funding sources. Next slide. Next slide. Next slide. All right. Ultimately, we want to form the Aspen Justice Network across the jurisdictions that we're already in, to form a community of practice, public education, state and federal policy mobilization. Next slide. And then the final, this is the final part of this. Next slide. Stakeholder engagement, which is what we're involved in now. Planning, selection of a local host organization and local planning and leadership group. Initial implementation, selecting a local justice intermediary, forming the Justice Collaborative, forming the local CBAR team. Then, of course, the local justice intermediary will then do their inaugural justice audit and then the Justice Reinvestment Plan, and then sustained implementation is to be able to do a second audit and to continuously do this year-round and doing the Justice Reinvestment Plans annually. Next slide. So this is how it all breaks down. We're right now in stage 1 in Birmingham with stakeholder engagement. We hope to be in stage 2 soon in terms of the planning period. The funding is $250,000. What we want to do is to take the lead in terms of pulling together a local funding collaborative here in Birmingham, as we've done in the other jurisdictions that we are working in. So that's the planning period. The next stage, again, is deep TA, focused on the implementation of the justice audit, creation of it, and the Justice Reinvestment Plan. That's up to $650 a year. That means a local person right there to do it, every day, waking up, directing it, a data scientist, policy specialist, all of that to make sure the justice audit and Justice Reinvestment Plan is done. And then finally, the transfer of capacity to the local collaborative, like TA, again, that same number to fund full-time positions to do this on an annual basis. And last slide. That is it.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the opportunity to present this afternoon.
Dr. Wood, any council members on here? Dr. Wood.
Happy to entertain questions.
I guess my first question is, so you help us collect this data, correct? You help us collect the numbers, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then from there, we'll have to hire outside people to implement?
No. What happens is we form a planning and leadership group that here in Birmingham that represents a cross-sector of people, right? And then that planning group will determine a host organization. And then whatever that host organization is, very similar to the local justice intermediary, it could be a university. Our technical assistants working with justice mapping, the people we provide, will help work directly with folks on the ground to do data sharing agreements and collecting the data, and the Justice Mapping Center will crunch all of that data in one consolidated place down to the neighborhood level. And then from there also work to create the Justice Reinvestment Plan. The initial planning stage is just getting everybody around the table and doing the stakeholder agreements and all that, the data sharing agreements. The second phase of that is the initial stage, and that's where you have the local justice intermediary, and they will work with Justice Mapping Center to create the inaugural justice audit and the Justice Reinvestment Plan. Then that is taken over by the local justice intermediary right here in Birmingham, and they will produce their own justice audit and justice reinvestment plan and do it on an annual basis. It's because what we leave on the ground is the actual software to be able to pull all this data together across different agencies. So this is something that is left on the ground that can be done by the local justice intermediary on an annual basis, but both the audit and the reinvestment plan. And the group that's helping with this, which Aspen provides through our national support, is the Justice Mapping Center headed up by Eric Cadora, who was the developer of the $1 Million Blocks theory and the developer of justice reinvestment as we know today, which is a $100 million program of the Justice Department. The difference is this is more of his original vision and my original vision, which is that we want to get it down to the neighborhood level. I don't know if I answered your question.
I'm hesitating because I may have to look this over, just the numbers, because we already get numbers for the amount of murders and everything. So I guess, are you trying to help us concentrate, help me out with this? Other than like crime rates, what are they helping, what numbers are they helping us to get? Dr. Woods, could you speak?
Because I think what Dr. Woods is trying to convey is collecting data, like all systems working together.
Yeah, we have actually, we have like 40 some odd data domains that we can also share with you that is all quantitative data that goes across different sectors. So it's not just the criminal justice agency data, but it's also healthcare data. It's also housing data. It's also education attainment data. So it's not just the criminal justice data that we would be seeking and consolidating, because we believe that in order to address the challenges, particularly violence, particularly in some of these communities, it's got to be not just the police and law enforcement, even though law enforcement's got to be a part of it, but it's also all of these other, kind of, as you know, these connected, related issues that need to be consolidated in one place. So you can see data across these different sectors.
I'm gonna let Council Williams ask these questions.
All right, so I have several questions. So one is, I'm a little bit confused, mainly because I just now got the presentation, so I haven't been able to read it all yet. Mm-hmm. So are you selling software?
No, we're not selling software. We're actually selling a way of doing. And that, what I mean by that is really giving people the capability to be able to pull together all of these different types of data in one place.
Okay. So you said that you have 40-something data domains, and is that you have those 40 data domains in Jefferson County or in Birmingham Metro?
Yes, we can. Yes. We're absolutely able to get this data, and particularly when it comes to the census tract data at the neighborhood level, which is, the data, the census just came out, and we can get the census tract data to be able to pull together all of this information. But we'll have to have data sharing agreements across different agencies to be able to do it. The data are there. They're not necessarily all in one place.
Okay. So you just have to get commitments from the agencies that house those data
Correct.
To give it
Exactly.
to you, with obviously the exception of the U.S. Census. There was a part about about you gather different groups of people to decide what happens, and those were listed as community-based organizations, interest group associations, community and youth leaders. Mm-hmm. What are the difference between those three?
Well, they form, well, first of all, what we want to do is form a planning and leadership group, which represents those stakeholders that you mentioned. So everybody is on together working at the same table. But then there's a larger set of stakeholder groups that we would ask them to be ambassadors to. So there's a slide in there when it shows the initial planning group, but then it goes outward to even more stakeholders, because we believe it's important to engage as many members of the community as possible and as many agency representation as we can. So, for example, in Grand Rapids, we have the police chief, we have the mayor, we have the city manager, we have the two heads of the two largest healthcare systems, the city superintendent, the county commissioners, members of the city council, philanthropy. It's all of those same representation that will act as a planning and leadership group. But then their job also is not only to provide counsel and advice and ongoing oversight, but then also to reach out to a larger set of stakeholders so that we make sure that we are getting as much community involvement as possible. And they will also help in the leadership of getting the data sharing agreements so that we can be able to crunch all the data and analyze all the data and put it within the audit itself.
Okay. On your slide for stages and the two-page handout, you have a planning period that costs $250,000.
Correct.
Then you have an initial implementation period that on the slide says cost up to $650,000. However, on the two-page it says it's $1.3 million. Then you have a sustained implementation that cost up to $650,000, and on the two-page letter to us, it's also $1.3 million. So what's the actual cost on this?
Well, if you look on the other side of that, on that slide, let me just pull that up. This is the anticipated time in terms of the months and years. So that first initial planning period is $250,000, and that is to go to a host organization to help bring all these stakeholder groups together. And then if you look at that last slide, when it comes to implementation, there is a time period. So you see the time period corresponds to the price. So you see under stage 3, $150,000 per year, time periods 2 to 2.5 years.
Okay.
And then up to 650, and you see the time period 1 to 1.5 years. That's where that comes from.
Okay. And then do you have any data on communities where y'all can show a actionable decrease in crime?
Yes, actually the Justice Mapping Center can provide that information, which is our key partner. So we can provide that to you as well.
I mean, I think that would be the most important thing to see is actually data around this.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, lots of the work that that Eric from the Justice Mapping Center spearheaded, both in Connecticut as well as in New York, and particularly in neighborhoods in New York where the crime has decreased, was based on neighborhood level data and analyses, and then being able to use that data to reinvest in other social services to help mitigate violence in those neighborhoods.
Understood. Still would like to see the data.
Well, one thing that the Justice Mapping Center is good at is data, crunching the numbers.
Any other questions, Councilor Smith?
Not right now.
One other thing I'd like to say, and I mentioned this to Councilor Tate, we probably had a little over 70 Zoom conversations in Grand Rapids. We had over 100 throughout the 17 counties in South Carolina, and we're at the very initial stages. Even though we've had some great conversations already with Councilor Tate and her staff, but we look forward to ongoing communication. And as many times as we need to ask any questions, provide any data, we are willing to do so. And happy to do so.
Got questions? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Woods. Great presentation, and we certainly appreciate it. We know that this is something that is not going to happen overnight. And like you said, the conversation has to keep going. So the most important thing is when you reimagine public safety is you have to have every stakeholder at the table. Every system needs to be at the table. Police, mayor, council, community, public health, housing authority, all these systems, the DA, because that's the only way you're gonna, drive neighborhoods and back into safety. So I'm just a proponent. When the research has already been done by people like Kara Mason and the John Jay College, follow the blueprint. And so I know that our mayor was a part of the National League of Cities task force that they formed. So he was a part of that. And so I was able to get that information from Kara Mason. That's already been researched and done, so the blueprint just needs to be followed. And so one of the things that I did see in there was to get all the systems, educate. Every system needs to be at the table. If any state, any city, violence is up all across the country. So if any state or any city is planning, moving towards a safe manner, we gotta include everybody. We just can't make decisions and leave, the other important systems that need to be a part. So thank you, Dr. Wood, and your team for traveling here, and the Aspen Institute for coming here. And so I really continue the conversation with you, and hopefully we can definitely get this in the city of Birmingham.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, and we look forward to a continuing dialogue.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time.
Oh, anytime I can get back to the South is a good thing.
And
I'm sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask a question about next steps for this. Really, it may be for you. Like, are we going to direct them to the health department to be a part of that process where there'll be some of those nonprofits that will get that money from the $1 million, or is this going to be like an independent?
Dr. Woods could speak to that. He could tell you the next steps.
I think the next steps would be to work with Councilor Tate and the mayor's office in identifying the next conversations we can have from representative stakeholder groups, because we're still in stakeholder engagement stage in Birmingham. So it's important for us to answer as many questions as possible. We're not at that asking for data or anything like that yet. We have to make sure that we form a planning and leadership group that is representative of the stakeholders that we think should be at the table. And then we will be working at the same time to leverage local dollars and combine those hopefully with national dollars so that we can fund the planning period and ultimately the initial and sustained implementation. But the next step is a continuing dialogue with those stakeholder groups.
Okay, thank you. I'm just trying to think about the funding piece, just, because the most important thing with the program, and I think this is a really good program, Council, is make sure we have funding for you all, because I would hate for us to go through all that work and then we get stopped because they tell us there isn't any funding available currently.
Well, simultaneously, we did the same thing in Grand Rapids. We were having those conversations on the one hand, and at the same time also trying to be as strategic as possible in terms of leveraging dollars, which is why we got the support from the Michigan Justice Fund to do the local work in Grand Rapids, and coupling that with the national funders that we have to support the technical assistance. So we want to do the same thing here.
Okay, perfect.
Those two trains running at the same time.
Yeah.
I actually have two more questions, if you don't mind. For the funding, do y'all help and assist in applying for those grants? Like, do y'all do grant writing to apply for those federal grants that we would match our funding with?
Well, we can act as counsel to that. I mean, we don't necessarily do staffing to write, federal grants, but we can certainly, help in terms of providing assistance and counseling and advice. Because we've done that before. But what I always like, even though I talk about braided social purpose budgeting, which is what we ultimately want to see in these jurisdictions, this work is also what I would call funded in a braided way. Because we are funded now by the three largest criminal justice foundations in the country, Arnold Ventures, which Councilor Tate has a marvelous relationship with. Also, Chan Zuckerberg, which hopefully will be moving over to the Just Fund with them, which is a $350 million fund, and the Ford Foundation, along with Bank of America Charitable Foundation. So the technical assistance work with the justice mapping is funded by the national funders. And what we want to be able to do is to leverage that national investment to local investment. So it's braided.
So, excuse me for how slow I am, but the grant funding would come from one of those national organizations more so than the federal government, or do y'all pursue both? Or
we don't necessarily pursue the federal government necessarily, unless it's federal dollars that have been allocated to the local jurisdiction, and then we could actually, hopefully leverage some of that to invest in some of this work, along with other local funders. Like foundations and things of that nature. So we don't necessarily go after federal dollars unless it's federal dollars allocated at the local level that they can then use for, local work that would be commensurate with what we're doing with the Justice and Governance Partnership.
Gotcha. And then from when you have somebody implemented here, is that during the initial implementation period, you actually have a staff member here? Is that correct? Did I understand that correctly?
Well, the funding for the initial implementation with the $650, that would fund a full-time staff member leading it here on the ground, along with a policy analyst and a data specialist, and they would be working hand in hand with the data specialists of the Justice Mapping Center to produce the inaugural justice audit and the justice reinvestment plan. Then we would transfer that over to the local justice intermediary so they can do this on an annual basis. Both the justice audit and the justice reinvestment, and the software will go along with it.
Okay, so when the intermediary is in place, that's a permanent role then in the city?
Yes.
Okay.
We hope the plan is to, leave that local capacity on the ground.
And how much coordination do y'all have with local law enforcement?
My goodness, we think it's critically important to have coordination with local law enforcement. We have, for example, as I said before, on the planning and leadership group in Grand Rapids, we have the police chief on the planning committee. We have the public defender on it. We have the prosecutor on it. In the state of South Carolina, we have what we call it in South Carolina, solicitors. It's the old English version, but they're prosecutors. So we have the solicitors from all three regions that make up the corridor, the 17 counties. We have, legislators that are also involved. In fact, the co-chair of the one in Grand Rapids is David LeGrand, who sits in the House of Representatives in Michigan, who actually authored all of the progressive criminal justice legislation signed by Governor Whitmer. So we want to have government involved. We want to have law enforcement involved. We want to have health. We want to have education. We want to have business. So it's not just it's everybody, basically, because it's important for everybody to be at the table. And the cool thing about Grand Rapids is we not only have the police chief, but we have a representative from the ACLU. The ACLU is suing the police department, but they're working together on the Justice and Governance Partnership, which is great.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
I gotta go. I have a meeting in my office. No, this ain't here.
Thank you, Dr. Woods. Again, thank you very much for taking time out your busy schedule to come here and present this presentation to us. And I guess I do see a lot of different stakeholders in here as well. So we hope to continue this conversation and hopefully get this great plan in Birmingham because it's needed. Thank you, Dr. Woods. All right, I move for adjournment.
Second.